What's up everyone, Angel here, back with another episode of Melodic Tension. We're going to be exploring the fourth mode, which is named Lydian, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably heard that word Lydian tossed around amongst your favorite guitars, because a good amount of us tend to use it quite a bit. Now I'm going to be giving you guys some insight as to how I use Lydian in my own songwriting, primarily on a rhythm guitar front. I'm sure I use Lydian a bunch in leads, but for the life of me I can't think of any particular sections right now that implement Lydian. Maybe I will by the end of this, but I do know, however, a bunch of riffs that do implement the shapes that Lydian offers us to play. So let's get right into it. Now to keep it very streamlined, we're going to keep the same key of G major, which is where we started our Ionian, and then we had our A Dorian, then we had our B Phrygian. Now this brings us to C Lydian again, because the first note that we're playing in this series of Lydian is C. Alright, so let's go through the whole mode in the 3-note per string format, because that's definitely the format that you want to learn how to play it. If you look online, you'll probably see a bunch of different ways on how to play these modes. Personally, myself and a lot of modern guitarists tend to gravitate towards the 3-note per string just because we can apply a lot of different techniques to it, such as legato and tapping and things of that nature. So C Lydian sounds something like this. So you notice that this mode picks up right where Phrygian left off at. Alright, and so on and so forth throughout the rest of the strings. Of course, with any new mode, you have to start off with just playing it low to high to low, as we have been doing, so we're going to do just that. So what you're going to play is this. Again, slower. Now, as always, I do implore you guys to experiment with the fingerings, see which ones work for you, which ones don't work for you. However, like I say often as well, don't get married to specific fingerings, because if you're in the midst of a solo that has a little lick of Lydian in it, it really does depend on what lied before that little Lydian part and where you're going to as well. Because, maybe the part of the solo, it takes you somewhere where it's not necessarily comfortable to do what's natural as far as what fingers you use. For the most part, I would say most guitarists, I'm not going to say all, would probably use 1, 2, 4 for the first 3 notes. I'm sorry, for the first 3 strings. And technically what's most efficient is to use 1, 3, 4, because look at this right here. And then you have this note right here kind of begging to play that 11th fret on the G string, which is where you want to go. However, myself, I hate doing 1, 3, 4, so I would go. Now, a good example of the foresight of where the mode goes is in between G and B. So you have the same shape, but you also have that half step that you have to compensate for. So you could use that as a transition to get to a fingering that's a little bit more comfortable for you on the B string, or you can just keep it pretty streamlined as far as the fingers that you use to keep, I guess, from moving fingers around. If you're going 1, 2, 4, then 1, 3, 4, or 1, 3, 4 to 1, 2, 4, it's pretty much up to you. Now to finish it off, 10, 12, 14 up on top. So also keep that in mind. speed. And a little slower. Now for that lick, I tend to use alternate picking again because that's just an inherent strength of mine, but you're more than able to do this with economy picking or whatever picking pattern works for you. Now this next little lead guitar exercise is a bit confusing, but the whole purpose of it being confusing is so that it breaks you out of the box so that you're not constantly going low to high, high to low, and getting conditioned to that. I really want you guys to have at least a little bit of insight as to how to change the notes around to make it unpredictable. So it's going to sound like this. So you'll see, that's a perfect example. I did not use 1, 2, 4, which I normally would use in any other situation, because the lick just jumps around so much. I felt more comfortable using 1, 3, 4 on maybe the G or B string, one of the two. Now here it is again, a little more up to speed. One more time. Now before we open the gates to the rhythm guitar world and how to apply this to Lydian, I want to stress the fact of using all the other licks that we used in Ionian, Dorian, and Phrygian, and also the blends, and apply them to Lydian, because Lydian's a completely different shape with a completely new set of challenges, and I don't want you guys getting conditioned to licks that we did in Ionian, and probably by now you could probably rip through them pretty quick. Apply them to Lydian and apply yourself. Challenge yourself. I think one of the legato licks was something like something like that, if I remember correctly. And that's a tough lick to do in Lydian, but you don't want to limit yourself to certain positions, because if you're doing a solo that's in a specific key and you're climbing up and you need to borrow a few notes from Lydian, you want it to be very seamless. All right, now time for some rhythm guitar concepts in the mode Lydian. I use this quite a bit. There's a lot of different variations that you can do, so it's a good way to disguise some of your licks and kind of add a little bit of zest, a little bit of life back into them, or a different life, or a different color, or a different hue of pink, or a different hue of orange, so it's all about being very creative, okay? So the first riff that comes to mind is the verse in the song 3 off of Away with Words Part 1. It's a very straight chugging riff, and although the riff as it progresses is very subtle, it is a very dramatic change. The notes that change in this riff, again, are very subtle, but they really do change the mood quite a bit. This song now is typically in the key of G sharp major, okay, which would bring everything up 1 fret, okay? But for all intents and purposes, I'm going to keep it in the key of G major slash, C Lydian, all right, instead of, the album version. And we're going to do it a little bit higher. We're going to stay in this register. So the riff that I'm talking about is this one right here, and I'll do it in the album key. All right, so we're going to be working on that, but we're going to transpose it up a half step just to keep in the key that we're learning in, and we're also going to do it an octave higher, because I don't really want to throw the 7th string in there just yet. I really want to focus on the 6th string versions in standard tuning, of course, which is what I always play in. So that's going to bring us up to here again. So that riff is going to be here. So it would go something like this. So if you see the first 9 notes of Lydian, I'm getting that chord right there, which is 8, 10, and 9. All right, one of my favorite chords. So the riff is going to go like this. with the right hand, extremely important. Now with the right hand, it has an up, up, down, up, up, down, up, up, down. There's no other way to do this. You cannot downpick it. It's impossible. And if you do get it downpicked, it's going to sound like absolute shit. So if you're doing up, up, down, again, you'll have that control of the riff because you'll be attacking it from the outside of the string, which we talk about a lot in these lessons. However, again, if you want to do alternate picking, it might be a little more difficult because you won't have as much stability with the right hand as you would if you just kept it up, up, down, up, up, down, because the riff is very constant. I want you to pay attention to what's going on with the right hand. So you have a nice controlled, almost like a locomotive, sounds like a train kind of going because you have that constant groove happening. Now another riff that I use Lydian is in the song of Venusian Spring. Now this song is transposed to the key of B minor or D major, it's the same. And in that case, since it's pulling the key down to B minor, it's going to make the Lydian position start in G. So it's going to be G Lydian. So it'll be, all right, in order to play that lick. So Venusian Spring starts off like this. So you'll notice right there how it kind of teeters into Phrygian just a little bit. An F sharp Phrygian. Then you have your G Lydian. All right, so it's kind of like just taking the position over here from Phrygian and Lydian and scooting it all the way down to the 3rd fret. So again, we'll do it super slow. All right, so for this last lick, we're going to flip the script, go back to some lead guitar techniques real quick, and I'm going to show you a string skip tapping lick that you can use in the Lydian mode. It'll sound like this. Let's try it a little bit slower. And that does it for the 4th mode, Lydian, in the series of major and minor scale modes. We went through Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, and now Lydian. Now tune in to the next episode where we're going to be exploring a blend of Phrygian and Lydian and doing some interesting blends between those 2 modes. And until the next time, see you around.